everyone. I think that's at least 50% of his class has his grade or lower. Is moving towards everything race.
And the police comes and they say, well, we can't do anything.
Of course, all opinions are my own, not my employer's.
Period.
Hello, it's Wednesday, and you know what it is. It's Pop and Politics. Tonight is going to be an action-packed night, so buckle up as we bring you the latest in trending news and entertainment. I'm KJ, and without further ado, let me introduce you to my co-hosts. We have T, back from vacation, so she's back here this week. We have Shelly E. We also are joined tonight by Tyrone Keys, who is a special guest co-host with us tonight. And then also our guest for the night is Yana. Roya Hanna. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. All right. So again, Yana and Xandria are on vacation tonight and will return next week. So join the conversation by leaving a comment on our Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. And don't just comment, subscribe. Subscribe to our social media so you always know when we post new content. Check us out on the web at www.metroconservativemedia.com for up-to-date information. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, as we say at the top of each show, let's set it off. So we are starting off today, as I mentioned earlier, with our special guest, Roya Hanna. I want to give you guys a brief biography or a description of her background. After graduating from law school, Roya began her career at the National Center for Community Prosecution and Gun Violence Prevention. Wanting to do more in her own community, Roya became a prosecutor in Baltimore City. She was there for 12 years, trying over 100 jury trials and litigating countless motions. In her time there, she served in the homicide, non-fatal shootings, felony narcotics, misdemeanor, and juvenile units. In her last 4 years in the state's attorney's office, Roya tried murder cases almost exclusively, and she never lost a homicide case. Roya is currently a defense attorney and is now running for Baltimore City State's Attorney. Welcome, Roya.
Thank you so much, KJ, for having me.
Yes, we are so excited to have you on tonight, and thank you for chatting with us. All right, so we'll get right into it. I want to just start off with Marilyn Mosby. I want to get your thoughts on this. So this week, as we know, she's no longer prosecuting people for possessing drugs, prostitution, and other nonviolent offenses. She's also dismissed pending cases of drug possession. So recently, a Johns Hopkins research team completed a study and found no increase in citizen complaints or greater threat to public safety. So I want to get your thoughts, Roya, on what do you think of this policy, and then how it, in this Johns Hopkins recent study that came out recently.
Well, there's a couple of problems with the study. First of all, it is based on 750 cases that were in warrant status that she dismissed early on in the pandemic. And what they did was they followed those people and saw if they picked up any new crimes. And only a handful of them picked up crimes of violence. And so that's why they're saying that it doesn't have any impact. But, if somebody's in warrant status for years, that means they're not a frequent flyer, right? They don't often encounter the police. They don't often encounter the criminal justice system, which is why their case is outstanding for years. So I wouldn't expect those people to necessarily be committing the violent crimes in the city. The other issue with the Hopkins study is it said that, there weren't increased calls for service. Well, if somebody is making a call for service for prostitution or drugs, they're generally a pretty involved citizen, right? They follow the news, they know what's going on, and they knew that Miss Mosby was not prosecuting these things. And most people don't like screaming into the wind, so they don't call the police and report these issues. So saying we're not going to prosecute these cases, and oh, look, nobody wants us to because nobody's calling the police to complain about it when nothing's going to happen, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think, if you go to community meetings, and Miss Mosby's actually gotten a lot of flack about this, at a lot of the events that she's having, people are fed up. They're angry. They see people urinating and defecating on their sidewalks. They see drug shops opening back up in their communities, and nobody is able to do anything about it. People are frustrated, and they want people to get services for drug use. Most people in the community are not about locking up drug users. And in fact, if you look at my plan is not about locking up users either. It is about having them be arrested to send them to services, because often people need that little push that, listen, your life is not going as planned. You're getting arrested. You're here. It's time for treatment. And people are not getting the treatment. And we've had a 12% increase in overdose deaths last year. That is a huge amount of people that we're just writing off because Miss Mosby doesn't want to do her job.
All right. I want to go to Shelly. What are your thoughts, or what's your question tonight?
Yes. So Roya, Marilyn Mosby has said many times that these low-level crimes take away resources and personnel, take away the attention that could be dedicated to more, more important, more significant crimes, such as homicides and shootings. However, as you just mentioned, there was an increase in overdose, and even as of this year, there's an increase in homicides and shootings. So, number one, is that true that we don't have the resources to adjudicate these low-level crimes, or are we taking away the resources? And since we are not prosecuting these crimes, why are the crimes still going up? Why are homicides still up if the resources are available?
Well, there's a couple of different problems with that office. I don't know if you saw in the Baltimore Sun this week, it came out with an article that said that the state's attorney's office has gone down from 217 prosecutors to 167. Miss Mosby cannot keep people in that office. I have been, in and around the criminal justice community in Baltimore since 2003. We've always had over 200 prosecutors. And there's a real issue with her office being able to retain people.
Why can't she retain them? What's going on?
It's chaos. The prosecutors are not given the resources that they need. They're not given the support from their front office. Miss Mosby spends so much of the time and treasure hiring community liaisons and people who don't go to court, who don't actually forward the mission of the state's attorney's office, which at the end of the day is to prosecute crime. And, these people go to community fairs and talk about how great she's doing and tell people not to believe their eyes and just to go on what she says. And that's just not working. So she can't retain people because she's not supporting them, because they know that she doesn't actually believe in the mission of her office. She is more geared towards being a defense attorney and then being a prosecutor. So I think that is what the real crux of the matter is at this point. There are people in homicide who have only had a handful of jury trials, about less than 5. There are a couple people there with less than 5 jury trials. When I went to homicide, I had 85 jury trials. So that is the difference that we're seeing. We're seeing people who leave, and when they just make it to felony, they leave right after they're in there for a little bit of time. Since May, 40 prosecutors have left since May. Sex offense, the special victims unit, they call it, but it handles some sex offense and domestics, is down by about half. Felony is down by about half. This is a real problem. And the numbers of cases are down under Miss Mosby. It also is about half, but she's not devoting more resources to prosecuting these crimes because she doesn't have the people to do it. You know, even when Miss Mosby first started in the office, she generally enforced the mandatory minimum for handgun cases for people who were frequent flyers. And I don't necessarily believe in mandatory minimums for everyone, but for the people who do consistently come back, I do think they need a substantial amount of jail time. Nowadays, we're seeing probation for handgun cases almost across the board. And it may not be a huge problem right now, but when those people realize, hey, I'm getting probation for handguns, I can just keep doing this. I can keep carrying. I can, get mad at somebody and pop off. It's going to lead to even more increased violence. And it all stems from her mismanagement in that office. And that's why we need new leadership.
All right.
Were you around?
That's what I was going to say. Go ahead,
Were
T.
you around during the time of the Freddie Gray, whatever they were calling it, riots? Were you in her office at that time?
No, I had actually just quit. I think the week before Freddie Gray passed away.
Oh, so you quit because of the claim, because of the same reason that everyone else quit, because they don't have the resources and everything at that time?
No, at that time, when obviously we knew in June of 2014 that she was going to come into power, right? And I didn't have a problem with it. Miss Mosby was my law clerk. She was nice enough. I figured it would be fine. And then the first day that she came into office, Homicide had a meeting, and we were told she doesn't care about your cases. She doesn't want updates on them. She doesn't want to be involved in them at all. All she cares about is politics. So just keep your name out of paper.
They said that.
Yeah. And I knew at that point that was not an administration that I wanted to work for, because I want to work for the citizens of Baltimore, right? I want somebody who cares about my cases as a prosecutor, who wants to make sure that I have the resources to do my job and to do it effectively. Because, these cases are real people's lives. They're real victims' lives, real families' lives, and real defendants' lives. You can't just give this short shrift. And it requires dedication and determination to make sure that the right thing happens.
What is the right thing according to, what do you think the right thing is?
Well, it depends on the case, right? Part of my plan is to strengthen the screening unit of the state's attorney's office, because one of the things I'm seeing is that a lot of cases will never be able to be proved. A couple of weeks ago, I had a mistrial, and the general facts of the case are that a woman is accused of directing somebody to shoot, but she is very clearly on the phone with 911 at the time of the shooting. She calls before the shooting, and she is on the phone with 911 when the shots are fired. This woman couldn't have done that crime. And if there had been adequate screening, she would have never been charged. But instead, what happened was the state withheld exculpatory information that somebody else did the shooting for 2 years. And that's why it ended in a mistrial. That is the effect of not training your prosecutors and not making sure that they know how to do their job properly. And like I said, it's real people's lives. And cases are being lost because evidence is not adequately gathered at the beginning. We have to recognize we have a very young police force as well. And they do not have adequate training on how to properly conduct investigations. And all too often, it is easy to walk in and say, the police didn't do enough. They should have got this camera. They should have interviewed this witness. They should have done all of this. You can't fix a lot of those problems, especially the camera issue, 3 months down the road, because by then the stores have deleted the cameras, or Ring camera doesn't keep it, or whatever the situation. You can't fix it. You have to do it at the beginning. As far as the right thing with Freddie Gray, I don't think we'll ever really know the answer to that, right? It wasn't investigated properly. She didn't even have anybody who had ever prosecuted a homicide trying that case. She had her deputies who were defense attorneys, being a defense attorney and being a prosecutor, having done both, I can tell you they are very different things. A prosecutor is about building the case, closing the holes, making sure every question is answered. If you had an opportunity to watch the George Floyd trial at all, you saw what a professional prosecution looks like. They answered every single question that a jury could have had. And you know what we got from Miss Mosby's office with the Freddie Gray case is we couldn't even figure out how he really died. At first she came out with, oh, this was a rough ride theory, and or he was beaten, and then ultimately it came down to, well, they didn't seatbelt him. And it's just, when you can't even answer the basic question of what happened, you have a problem with your case. And that's why I think it needed more investigation. And maybe, you know, if people weren't charged, people would be more forthcoming with the evidence. But that's not what happened, because she just wanted to get up on the steps of the war memorial and make her announcement and be in vogue and do all of those things. This wasn't about Freddie Gray, and it wasn't about his family, and it wasn't about the city of Baltimore. And, you know, I've tried and convicted retired police officers for shooting unarmed people. I do not put up with police misconduct in any way, shape, or form, but it has to be done the right way, and it needs an investigation.
All right. Tyrone, did you want to step in?
Roya, yes, I have one question for you. I've long advocated for a really clear bifurcation between the repeat violent offender and how they are treated, and the nonviolent individual that may be entering the criminal justice system for the first time, and developing a real clear rehabilitative aspect to the latter. And then on the other half, with the former, working closely with the federal government to really, you know, drop the hammer and make it as unattractive as possible for people to resort to violent crime in the city. So much so that maybe, you know, even some RICO statute stuff could be incorporated into this sentencing, where you're working with other states to maybe do prisoner exchanges. So you commit a crime in Baltimore and you serve your time maybe in Colorado somewhere. Where do you come down on that? How do you see that working? Is that something that you've considered if you are successful in your bid?
Definitely. You know, I think part of the issue with having young prosecutors and having Miss Mosby never having served as a defense attorney is she doesn't understand. Not all criminals are the same, right? Like there are people who commit crimes just because they're scared. I'm seeing that a lot more these days. A lot more people are carrying guns and overreacting because they're legitimately scared. And then you have followers who, if they had a different group of friends, they would never be in that situation. It's just not in their nature. And it takes experience to be able to figure out who's who. And when you have such a young state's attorney's office, you don't have people with that experience. And that is a real problem. And as far as the federal partnership, the state's attorney's office has always had a good relationship with the feds as far as that is concerned. But from my experience, it has gotten not as good these days. And a lot of cases that should have been referred to the feds are not being taken federal. And I think we're going to see the effects of that shortly, because, you know, even in my first year as a defense attorney under Miss Mosby, I had 5 or 6 cases go federal. I haven't had any in 2-3 years. So it's just, there's a big difference.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, we do have one question here as we wrap this segment up. It is Stephen. This is actually to Tyrone. This sounds awfully like federalizing city corrections. That's not very conservative, Mr. Keys.
Okay. I'm looking for solutions, not to, you know, subscribe to any particular label.
That's right.
All right. And I do want to ask one additional question. So as far as when you win,
I'm gonna win.
how would you interact with Mr. Mosby? So if he is still city council president, do you see that being an issue? And do you see it an issue now with Marilyn Mosby as the state's attorney and then he as the president of the city council?
Well, I watched Ms. Mosby testify before the city council, and everyone is incredibly deferential. Nobody challenges her on anything. And I think that is the effect of Mr. Mosby being the head of city council. Nobody asked her about her budget. Her budget has gone up 35% since she took over, so about $14 million. Nobody questions where the money goes. If she's lost 50 prosecutors, that's $500,000. Nobody's asking what is it being reallocated to, what's happening. That is the purpose of the city council, is to figure out if the money that they allocate to these agencies is being spent effectively. That's not happening. And, as far as a good working relationship, I get along with people who I disagree with every single day, right? So I don't foresee that being an issue. I intend to run a professional agency, and I think that it will be fine.
I have one more question.
Go. You have the last word.
So I'm going to give you a disclaimer. This is going to be a sort of a catch 22 question. As a prosecutor, and as many gun crimes that we do have in Baltimore in particular, would you be open to supporting the right to carry in Baltimore City for legal gun owners?
I think that is a difficult situation. At this point, no, because then we get into problems with police seeing guns on people and not knowing if that is probable cause to arrest them or to stop them, or I think right now it creates a big problem. And people who are not adequately trained, I think it would lead to increased violence at this point, and we just don't need any more of that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Roya. This is kind of something I wanted to just ponder to you, because when I'm around Baltimore City, like I think it was the Sun or the Afro newspaper, they had a feature there with Marilyn Mosby, and she was sitting with some Black leaders within the city, and it said, I think the headline was Black leadership supports Marilyn Mosby. And so that is kind of a real issue or narrative, especially within the Democratic Party, how you have to check a certain box in order, or they say you have to check a certain box in order to win in Baltimore. So it's not necessarily the most qualified person all the time. It's basically how many boxes can you check? Are you Black? Are you, transgender? Are you so many boxes? How do you navigate that in this race? Because we do have Marilyn Mosby and possibly Ivan Bates. How do you navigate that?
Well, what I hear is that people want the most qualified person. I understand that in Democratic politics, often these things take on a life of their own and become more important than they should be. And I also think, given my background and, my parents worked for State Department. So I grew up in Haiti, Samoa, Tanzania, Czechoslovakia, Morocco, Canada, and Israel. I am not like your typical white girl from the suburbs kind of deal. I've always had a very diverse background and diverse community around me. And so I do think that helps, because it makes me just more comfortable with every different type of person and more interested in making sure that every type of person is comfortable with me. So I think that will be an important factor in this race.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us tonight. Before we let you go, is there any? Can you tell our audience how people can support you and anything that you'd like to let us know about?
We have a website up. It's at www.electroyahanna.com, and you can sign up to volunteer. We're going door knocking. We're doing all sorts of different things. If you just have ideas and you want to send us an email of things that you want to see happen or concerns that you have, I always take time to address those issues. And, this is politics, so my fundraiser would be annoyed if I didn't make that pitch as well. But most important, this is going to be a grassroots campaign, and we need support, and we need people out there spreading the word and forwarding the website on their social media and whatnot.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. All the best to you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Enjoy the show. Bye.
All right. So that was great. Okay. So we are moving right along. Well, I didn't even get a chance to make this announcement. Tyrone, this is the first time we've had a male co-host on the show.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
I'm
you
honored
are
to be
a
here then.
male co-host, so welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. And please continue to comment as you watch. What do you think about Tyrone? Should we mix it up more now? Should we have more men on the show? Definitely comment by leaving a message on our Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. Also, subscribe to our social media so you always know when we post new content. Check us out on the web at www.metroconservativemedia.com for up-to-date information. Again, we are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, so we are going to move right along to our pop-off rapid fire round. So, Tyrone, I'm not sure if you've watched it before, but this is the point in the show where I ask each co-host a random question, and they have 30 seconds to respond. They don't know the question, so it's basically just you respond right off the cuff.
This is set up.
No.
Basically.
Okay. Well, with that attitude, I'll start with you, T. All right.
See?
Okay, so in a recent Men's Health article, they discussed a new trend in relationships called adult breastfeeding, also known as adult nursing relationships. This was in Men's Health, this month's Men's Health. So basically, where women breastfeed their men, and it's supposed to make them feel sexier and more confident. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I had to not say my first thought. So the women are breastfeeding the men.
Yes, they are breastfeeding the men as a form of bonding. It's adult breastfeeding, and they're trying to push this mainstream. Right now, it's on the fringe. But according to this Men's Health article this month, it's definitely becoming a little bit more in the mainstream.
Well, I have heard of something like that. I do understand that men are comforted by women's breasts. I don't know about breastfeeding them, but it is comforting, and love pillows as you wish for men. So I can understand, but I think they've crossed that line with breastfeeding because that's for the baby's nutrition. That's not. I mean, it's a mental issue there. That's I don't know who would be. I can guess who would be participating in this, but I'm not safe. But it isn't something that I would want to do or would do because it's crossing the line. Okay. Now, if they want to go and do protests and stuff then I expect those people to do that. But no, it's disgusting.
Okay. All right.
I don't have too much to pop off about this.
I thought they do stuff like that in the bedroom. I thought men and women do that in the bedroom.
Well, no, it's not breastfeeding though. They have where you act there. The men are actually taking in this milk for nutrition value, but it also the way the article discussed is women feel more sexy, and these men like it.
No, I mean, you can't breastfeed unless you have a baby. So
Right. Well, it's something to do with lactation. So I guess once they have the baby, they try to continue the milk so they continue to pump and keep the breast milk going.
Most of the men I know
is this why we
already
have a whole lot of men who are still children? Mama's boys,
most of the men that I
literally.
know are ready to get back to the breastfeed.
All right. Well, that's what I want to get your comment on that. We'll move right along to Shelly. So Don Trump Jr. sells T-shirts. He's been selling T-shirts on his websites to promote it to include the tagline "Guns don't kill people. Alec Baldwin kills people." The shirts appeared online after Baldwin fired a prop gun on a movie set that killed cinematographer Colleen Hutchins and injured director Joel Sousa. So, Shelly, the question to you, is it a cool idea or did he go too far?
Look, let me say, Alec Baldwin shooting that woman and that man, actually killing the woman, is a tragedy. It's horrible. So to make light of that, to just use this moment at the expense to make light of Alec Baldwin. Look, most people, or at least I would say, and many conservatives do not like Alec Baldwin. I can't stand him. There are probably a lot of people who think the same way, who feel the same way. However, to use this to make light of Alec sort of disregards the life that was taken and injured. I think they need to make this separate, make this two distinct things, not combine the two. This lady, probably hasn't even been buried yet. She left a family, kids, without a mother now. I wish Alec Baldwin maybe had turned the gun towards himself, whatever. But I think that's a little crass because it's not really focused on the person who really was injured and dead. Alec Baldwin is still alive. Yes, he may be grieving and upset and feel horrible, but other than that, that's it.
All right, we're moving right along to Tyrone. So Tyrone, do you support the Biden administration's wealth tax on billionaires? Why or why not?
I definitely don't. I think that most people, the way they're selling it, and the way they sell a lot of this these economic packages, is to get you riled up against the evil rich. But it acts as a Trojan horse. First, we'll do this to billionaires, and no one will argue with it because America, unfortunately, a large component of America has succumbed to this whole envy thing. Not in the least bit jealous of Jeff Bezos. In fact, I had an Amazon package delivered here earlier today. I'm grateful for the service. But a lot of people have, allowed government media to, separate them from good sense. So they'll applaud this billionaires tax. Democrats are already talking about they want to push it down to millionaires. And then after they're done with the millionaires, then it gets to the people who work 9 to 5 and make $70,000 a year. Because of course, the ones that make $40,000 can always be mad at the ones who make $70,000. So I'm not for it, especially when you consider the fact that a capital tax on unrealized capital gains means that it's money you haven't seen. You haven't done anything with it. You just realize appreciation, but it's a paper gain, nothing more. So I'm definitely against it. And you know what I am for? I'm for politicians having to take a macroeconomics course before they can take office.
That's true. I think everyone should. That's a good point right there. I believe everyone should.
Exactly.
Because it definitely assists on your worldview and you see things a lot more clear. That's a good point there. All right. Again, join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Oh, we do have a comment here. Let's see. But when you tax the billionaires, it automatically passes down to the middle or lower class. Billionaires know how to pass along expenses.
Yeah, whoever wrote that is absolutely correct. Right. That's an excellent point because once this starts to come down to the lower economic ranks, folk don't have armies of CPAs and tax attorneys. H&R Block is not going to get you out of the, financial morass that DC is creating. So whoever wrote that comment is absolutely correct. The wealthy do have those resources to mitigate any taxation that comes along.
Right.
Yeah. All right. If you have a question, guys, the audience, if you have a question that you'd like to hear answered by one of the co-hosts, email me at kj@metroconservativemedia.com. We will ask the co-host your question during our next pop-off. All right. So we are moving right along to our next topic. Ignorance is deadly, and these activists are becoming icons and don't know what they are talking about. So we're talking specifically about the issues with Dave Chappelle and Alec Baldwin over the past couple of weeks. Want to get your thoughts on this, and basically coming from a point of you have these people, these generally people on the left, who comment on Dave Chappelle about the transgenders and Alec Baldwin. He's been going against gun control for years. What do you guys think about that? Do they have any relevance? Is this something that they should be doing? Does it make sense? I want to start with you, Shelly.
So I think in general, I would say no, they don't make sense. The left rarely makes sense. As it relates to what we're talking about, Alec Baldwin, the gun control, ironically, on that set, you have a leftist actor who has, leaned against guns and all kinds of his own anger issues, but yet they have a loaded gun. No one bothered to even check the chamber. Rule number one of a firearm safety is to treat all weapons as if they are loaded, particularly guns, as if they're hot, right? So they had lack of safety controls, lack of precautions. They disregarded the rules that they themselves are always screaming about gun control, gun control. I had the basic question of, it's an acting set. Why do they even have real guns? They have CGI and all this other technology. Why do they even need real guns on the set? As it relates to Dave Chappelle, again, if you listen to his recent show, he talked about a friend that was transgender who I guess ultimately killed herself or himself, I don't know whichever one you say, but killed herself. And so he was not necessarily making fun of transgenders. And even if he were, so what? So what? This is comedy. This is what it is about. Comedy is looking at yourself and finding some glimpse of truth and laughing at it. We all do that individually and collectively.
Years ago, many years ago, a young lady I was dating, and we went to Pier 6 because Bernie Mac was giving a concert, and it was open seating. And she said, "Oh, we can sit in the front row." I said, "There's no way we're sitting in the front row of a Bernie Mac concert." Okay, we sat on the third row because you're gonna get some of that. Okay, you're gonna be a part of the show, and even if we did, it's cool. I think that it's very dangerous for people to believe that they occupy a position where they cannot be the subject of a natural human emotion like humor. And I think that what we've seen in the Chappelle case is that a certain group of people are not interested in inclusivity. They're interested in exclusivity. And Chappelle is right. That should be rejected. If you really want to be seen as, just like everybody else, then you certainly can be laughed at too.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you guys this, because there is a narrative in the LGBTQ community, or trans community, that when you speak out, when you don't use pronouns, when you talk about trans people as this being some type of mental health issue and not real, or you don't agree with them, you are contributing to their suicide. You are pushing them to commit suicide. What do you guys think
No,
about that?
their own mental issue. I mean, as sensitive as I can be, their own mental issues pushes them. I can see the bullying if that's the case, but just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't mean that you go and commit suicide. We're not going to agree. Not everyone is going to agree with that lifestyle. Not everyone's going to approve of that lifestyle. And it's okay. Most times we respect the person as an individual. We just don't approve or agree with what they have, especially transgender, because it's confusion and it's confusing. So I don't think that just because you don't agree with it and you hate it, and I think that's what Dave Chappelle was trying to say. Like, first of all, he said it, and they don't listen. They are quick to jump on, oh, he's being hate or or homophobic, or he hates transgender people, he hates the alphabet community. But he's clearly said, you're not listening, because my point is, I don't like, I mean, it's white people. Like, he didn't say anything about transgender. And just like the same thing happened with the baby, he made a comment about, raise your, at his concert in Miami, raise your hand if you don't have AIDS or something, you at a concert. And then they go making this an issue about the LGBTQ community when he didn't even say anything about them.
Right.
And
like
so,
Floyd, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so I'm like, they're quick to jump on this bandwagon of, oh, you're trying to hurt me, you're trying to bully me, and it's not. They're not listening. They're just so busy trying to focus on pushing that agenda that they're not even hearing what people are really saying. It wouldn't be that much confusion if they do listen.
It wouldn't be that much confusion if they stayed the way they were biologically, the way they were born. It wouldn't be that much confusion for them either.
Well, first of all, right.
Well,
earlier today, I think it was today or yesterday, Floyd Mayweather refused to give someone an autograph. Okay. And the last time I checked, if someone's asking someone else for an autograph, then the person they're asking is the decision maker. There's no obligation there. Okay. Floyd Mayweather said, no, I'm not giving you an autograph because something to the effect of, I don't give autographs to guys who paint their nails.
Right. He has nails painted.
Right. And this guy took it and immediately, oh, Floyd Mayweather is homophobic. Mm-hmm. Now, how you got that out of, I don't give autographs to people to guys who paint their nails, I don't know how you got that out of that. But there's also the component out here that every 7-year-old has a high definition camera and can get 15 minutes of fame off of, these little incidents that occur.
Well, Tyrone, if I could, let me back up there, because I want to ask you something, because there is a conversation where in the LGBTQ community against straight men. So, or whether you identify as a straight man, where they say, if you as a man, I know you. I'm not saying you. I'm saying where they say if a man says he will not date a transgender person, then you are homophobic. What are your thoughts on that?
I have learned I can't control what others think. However they think. If you want to have a dialogue and you want to observe facts, I'm open to that. Hopefully I will converse with someone who is, but to the extent that I found out I'm not dealing with a reasonable person, then, I really don't care. So if, and look, this is another thing. I used to be a firefighter EMT. And one of the things they taught us, when you encounter someone who may be delusional, you don't play along in the delusion. You stay grounded in reality. So
yes.
If you'd like to believe that somehow I'm homophobic because I don't want to date a biological man, then you run with that. I'm not going to try to change your mind. If that's what you want to do, fine. But I've heard that, and I just think that's really strange. That's
the
really
bigotry
strange
of it all. The bigotry of it all. They want to say, oh, you won't give me my choice and this is my life and I can do what I want to do. But they don't understand that, this is my life and I don't have to agree with it. This is my life and I don't have to date a man because it's a man.
Right. And then I think they encounter an issue where, a lot of women would probably tell them, hey, look, when you're looking for a certain type of guy, they're not like falling out of the woodwork to begin with. So now you're over here on this team, okay, and you've created an impediment because you have the biological thing going on where a lot of the men are just not going to opt for that at all.
So these are some of the same people. These are some of the same people who claim inclusivity, right? But they will exclude you quick in a hurry as soon as you don't agree with them on anything. Not only that, these are the same people who claim that Christians and Jews are exclusive, right? But they do the same thing. They do exactly what they claim the other people do, what they accuse others of doing. They, like T said, they're bigoted. They are confused. They're mostly confused.
Yeah. And then we have on the other side, we have with Alec Baldwin. So, you have a tragic occurrence that occurred on the set. But for years, he has rallied against gun rights. And here we have gun not thoroughly checked before Alec Baldwin fired. So, is there negligence on his part? This is
Absolutely.
a man who's a huge person in the gun.
Absolutely. Absolutely, there's negligence on his part for a couple of reasons. Anyone who handles a weapon, there are basically 4 basic firearm safety rules that every responsible person who owns a firearm should know, and they mostly do know. Every weapon is treated as if it's hot, as if it's loaded, until you check it and clear it yourself. I don't care, even if there was an armor on the property, on the set that gave him that, he was still responsible to check it himself, number 1. Number 2, you never point a firearm at something or someone that you don't intend to shoot. And if you do, you still need to know what is behind that, because bullets don't tend necessarily to stay inside of the target. They can go through. So you're responsible for that. So those rules were violated, not to mention the rules that may or may not have been up to par on the set itself. So yes, he could be negligently responsible. Certainly he could be civilly responsible. So yes, he does have some ownership in this, and as the executive producer, he is responsible for the safety and the laws being followed on that set, the laws of the state, particularly as they pertain to firearms.
You do realize it was a prop gun, though, right?
It was. You treat every firearm as if it is hot. You treat it as if it is hot. Obviously, whether it was a prop gun or real gun, the rules are you treat every one of them as hot.
Not only that, there was, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the Bruce Lee, not Bruce Lee, but his son, Brandon Lee, was killed in a similar circumstance years ago. And while they are calling that gun a prop gun,
right,
it apparently was still capable of doing the job of an actual gun. Because we got the guy wounded, and unfortunately, the lady is no longer with us. So, Alec Baldwin certainly should not have been. When now that reports are coming out that he was actively pointing the weapon in the direction of those individuals, that's never something you want to do with a firearm, period, whether you think it's loaded or not.
And especially when you haven't checked it to clear it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And this is someone that has been rallying for gun control. So you would think he would have some type of reference, because he has been pushing for this. But this is what we find on the left, where they create these icons and movements. And then you find out these people haven't done any research. They don't know what they're talking about. That's what I was saying with the transgenders against Dave Chappelle. So most of them hadn't even watched the show.
Right.
And they become catapulted in these movements, and they really don't know what they're talking about.
Again, even on his set, with CGI, there's so much technology. Why do they even need real weapons or weapons that can fire real projectiles? Why can't CGI? You can create the image that you need. Why do you even have to have more sets?
Well, I mean, as far as cinematography, that you want something, you want to get it as close to real as you can. I'm not even sure what. I think it may have been a Western they were shooting. We do have a comment here from Jim. He says the rules, their understanding of, and the enforcement of the rules come first. Only then comes the weapon, not until. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think it may have been coincidental that this happened to Alec Baldwin, but I don't think that, it was anything that we could be like, oh, he was rallying against gun control or gun laws or whatever he was rallying against. I don't think we can kind of relate that because it's isolated. It was a coincidence and a bad tragedy, of course, but I don't think it's
when you think about Alec Baldwin, and he has over the years been a strong supporter of gun control. He talks about Trump supporters, about your guns and things like that. Again, you would think he would have some level of, like Shelly said, checking the gun, talking about gun safety. This isn't gun safety, but you've been rallying about this for years and years, talking about Trump supporters and conservatives as if we are the ones that are irresponsible. And here he is, accident or not, it could have been easily prevented if he had done a basic commandment within, dealing with guns, check the gun.
And one thing that he has really gone on tirades about is how people should have this extensive amount of training. And so while I do agree with you that, Alec Baldwin definitely didn't mean for this to happen. There was no premeditation on anybody's part. I think it was just bad management all the way around. But if he had followed his own advice, then he would have either had training that he adhered to, or if he has had training, why didn't he adhere to it? So he can be gigged on that score. You definitely didn't follow your own advice.
He's making a movie about guns.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy of these Hollywood elites where they rally behind, guns are bad, and you're making a movie about guns.
Right.
CGI. That's why I say CGI. Why all this?
And I do agree with that.
CGI all the time, Shelly.
But you can, if somebody showed us, like if they just came at us and said, look, these are aliens landing on the White House lawn. The four of us might run in like 5 different directions. It's so real they can make it in Hollywood. Exactly. So, I suppose they might be able to do something. And you know what? I think that they'll definitely be working on that now.
I bet they will.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are moving right along to our final topic of the night, Bidenflation. So as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, the market is crazy. Food is a high increased in price. There was a news headline today about gas has gone up. We have supply chain issues. My question to you guys is, is this really Biden's fault? Is he the person who is responsible for this inflation that we're seeing? And as experts are saying, it's really going to get a lot worse. They're calling this Thanksgiving, this Thanksgiving that we have approaching is set to be the most expensive Thanksgiving on record, as far as, just food that you have to buy and things like that. So I want to start with you on this one, Tyrone. What are your thoughts?
Well, to be fair, it definitely is not solely Joe Biden's fault. This massive amount of spending actually started during the guy that I voted for during Trump's term. And, you can make the argument that we needed the stimulus. That whole thing will be debated for a long time because it was the governors who not only shut down their states, a lot of governors shut down their states, as you know, but they also, in my opinion, exposed the position of governor as the most prone to tyranny in this country right now, out of any other elected official, elected position. The governors are the ones you got to watch out for. But we spent that money as a result of their actions. We are continuing. Biden certainly didn't stop it. He has continued stimulus and child tax credit, and now we're on to the stimulus. So really, you could lay this at the feet of every president after Washington because it's been building and building and building. The dollar has lost an incredible amount of value since the 1950s. So there is that. It will continue. Okay, we have been on our channel, Money Changes Everything, for about a year now. Back when Jerome Powell was saying that there would be no inflation, we were saying he's wrong. And then when he witnessed that, when he started watching the channel and figured out we were right, obviously, he then started saying, oh, it's transitory. We said, no, it's not transitory. And here's why it's not transitory. Because these prices have gone up in part due to labor shortages. So people have been hired at higher wages. You're not going to at any point be able to retain an employee if you come to them and say, okay, now we're going to lower your wage. Okay. So that combined with the port issues, the supply. I drank this lime juice. Okay. It's from Italy. I called the company today and they're like, it's somewhere on the ship. Ain't coming in no time soon.
Now, one thing you said as far as the labor shortages, well, we have these labor shortages because of these stimulus checks. People are sitting at home; they don't want to work, and so now we have to, demand is up, and we have to pay people who are willing to work more than what we would normally pay. Is that what you're saying?
That's a big part of it. The grocery store that I frequent has a $500 signing bonus. They're paying people $20 an hour to work there. And that doesn't happen in a vacuum. That ends up being those costs transfer to the goods you're purchasing in the store, and it results in a higher grocery bill. Okay. So we're not going to see a cessation of that. What we're telling people is that they need to lock in prices wherever they can. So you need to buy a freezer and put as much food in there for your family as possible to lock in lower prices because we have to eat. We were telling people a few weeks ago, natural gas looks like it might spike if we have a cold winter. So call your gas and electric company, lock in a lower price. Don't be subject to the fluctuating higher prices.
That's all right. We have a question here. Again, I guess this Stephen man is one of your favorite fans, Tyrone. He said,
"Oh wow,
how do you feel about QE to the tune of 1.5 trillion a day?"
Yeah, actually, the Fed, they seem to be a little nervous about that because if you've been watching that, they're showing signs that they're going to back off of that. That's a good question, and it leads me into one thing that I am really sure of, and that's that the U.S. dollar is going to lose its reserve currency status by the early 2030s. Okay, and before the dollar had it, it was the UK and the British pound sterling, but we're going to lose that, and in preparation for that, I think. I'm sorry, T. Go ahead.
Then cryptocurrency, is that what the next wave is?
That's the jury's out. A lot of people are big fans of it. I think you saw the SEC go ahead and approve the Bitcoin futures ETF earlier in the week. So they're bringing it under their auspices to control it. So they must think it's going to be out there for a while. Who knows what the values will be 5 years from now? But hard assets like real estate, precious metals, stocks of companies that are real and turning out real products. I think more people need to really concern themselves with acquiring assets that will appreciate and insulate them from inflation.
So I had a question or comment. So what you were talking about, Tyrone, kind of this big picture viewpoint, I guess. And what I think, or maybe that's contributing to this inflation, the increases in prices, all of that. What we as consumers fail to see or realize is that all of these components intersect, right? We talk about this intersectionality of LGBTQ and sex and all this other stuff, but we always seem to miss the real intersection of the politics and the real life, how these things impact us when we have more and more government control, and how it dwindles down right down to the individual consumer. This is what we need to be focusing on. We talked earlier, someone mentioned about, or you said it, that all the politicians need to have a macroeconomics class. Well, I say as consumers, we need to start thinking that way as well. And one of the things we need to do is see and realize that our government, the bigger it gets, the more it hurts us as individuals.
Now, let me ask you this, because Shelly, and this is for you, Tyrone, also, you say that, but then you have people who are collecting these checks monthly. They're getting their money that they would have gotten at the end of the year. They're getting that and then some. And so they would say, I love it. I'm getting this money every year. I don't mind the government getting larger. I can stay at home while, I don't have daycare. So I can stay at home with my son or daughter due to these checks and don't have to work for a while. And then I'm getting unemployment. So that all coupled is I'm living life on the hog. What do you say to that?
Shelly, let me address your point first, and then I'll come back to it. When I was in DC, I'm telling you, no decision is made if it doesn't intersect with money. Nothing. Okay. It's all about the money. And the sooner the American public starts to realize that, I don't care what these politicians say, I don't care how many babies they kiss, bars of Negro spirituals they sang at your church when they come by every 4 years, none of that matters. Right. It's all about money. Now, to your point that the thought slipped my mind. I'm just so, if people can actually spend a week in DC understanding how these people work, there is no care down there. It's this whole faux thing where, we care about you. No, it's about money and power, and that's it. Okay. KJ, please help me out. Reiterate.
Yeah, I was just saying how, why would someone Shelly was saying the government is just getting larger. And so I'm saying, why do people care about that? Some people say, okay, whatever. They send me money every month. And I'm able to stay at home while, I don't have to go back to work. I can stay at home with my kid.
Right.
I get unemployment combined with these stimulus checks. Why do I care the government is getting larger?
And a certain portion of the society will gravitate toward that message. And we all know that it's a certain political ideology that advances that, because then they know once they've got you on that dole, they can keep you there. You will continue to put these people in power. And the exchange will be that you are forfeiting your spirit, your future, okay, for a pittance, basically. So to the extent that people can break out, they'll never have much of anything. They will not realize financial independence. And whatever the government says you need to do in order to keep that money flowing, then you'll have to do that. And you'll be a slave, basically, an economic slave.
But KJ, there's always going to be a segment of people like that. But that should not be the overarching policy. That should not be the overarching policy from the government that's in place. No matter what economy you're in, there's always going to be this sort of, if you want to call it underground, or this sort of dependence mindset. But the overarching policy that affects the majority of people and the majority of those who are paying the taxes to substantiate and subsidize that mindset, that should not be the main policy.
Right. Well, it's becoming that. I mentioned to you all earlier, you have a situation where young people are getting these stimulus checks. So I was at a friend's house a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking to her daughter about some type of bill or something that was coming up. And the daughter, who is about 17 or 18, said, "Oh, I'm waiting for my stimulus check, and then I'm going to, do this or do that." And so it was kind of jarring to me, because it's like, it's a young girl, and she's waiting for this stimulus check. And so that thinking where I'm depending on the government at that young age. That's not good.
No, it's
That's
not.
not good.
No, it's not.
There are people I know of guys who have told me that they're dating and they're talking to women, and these women, well, some of the women are actually like, I don't want to do anything. I want to be like my grandmother and my mother, and I want to depend on government, so to speak. I mean, in so many words.
Wow.
That way I can keep the money for myself or whatever that I make for myself, but I want to depend on the government. They want to depend on the government because their grandmothers and their mothers have. And it's sad because these are the ones who are not voting. So these are the ones who aren't.
Well, they're voting, they just don't know it. Somebody's mailing in those votes.
Right.
And it speaks to how quickly we have come to this point where you have generations that are, or a young generation relying on the government. While 2 and 3 generations ago, our ancestors would have abhorred that idea. I look at a lot of old shows. Take Good Times. That's granted it was a sitcom, but they were a family, a mother, a father. Yes, they were poor, but they didn't want to go on welfare. That was an anathema to them. That was an embarrassment to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even me, I'm in my 40s. So I remember working 16, 17 years old, and I didn't even think to get government assistance at that age. I'm just working. I'm like, I got to work, I'm working. And I never even thought of that. But now we have this younger generation of people who are automatically going to that in order to take care of themselves. It's just sad. I mean, I was really shocked to hear that when she said that. I was like, I'm looking like this young girl talking about my check.
Wow.
Yeah, they messed up when they put food stamps on an EBT card.
Yeah. Or what is it?
The food stamps is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It goes back to this entitlement mentality that you can get more. You can get something for not working for it. It's part of the entitlement mentality. You can get something and you don't have to earn it. It should be just given. That's the mentality.
But you're right. Food stamps were like extra big.
Yeah.
It was like broadcasting. This is not $1, people. Look at him. Look at him. Look what he has. So it was a stigma attached. And now the whole attitude has turned around, and it's sort of like, oh, you're entitled, to this.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'll share a personal story with you guys. I grew up in a single family household. My mom, it's 4 of us. I'm the oldest, and so there was a time when we were on government assistance. We had a card, and I remember I was 16, 15, 14, and I would go to the grocery store, and that was the most embarrassing time. I used to wait for everybody to go through the line, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, let me go. And I'll go, and you put it in real quick, and you do it. I mean, you didn't want anybody to know.
Right.
You had this card, But now, I was in the grocery store the other day, and this woman so loud, and she was just like, all right, well, so-and-so, you got the EBT card? And because she was at the cashier. And I was just like, oh my God.
Right.
I mean, this is what I'm talking about, though. The mentality has totally changed. It's totally changed. And there's nothing wrong with needing help. It's nothing wrong with needing help. Lord knows, I mean, like I just said, we needed help for a little bit of time. But this whole mentality, it's no pride. The pride is gone.
Right. So. Look, KJ, I have my mother. My mother was legally disabled because she had a systemic disease, and she earned. I mean, not earned. She was eligible for public assistance, and she was not supposed to work. But my mother refused to stay home. She worked in pain. Almost every day she was in pain, but she did not want to only rely on government assistance. She said, I'm just going to work under the table, which is what she did.
Mm-hmm. And we have similar background. But unfortunately, KJ, I'm older than you, so we had the actual food stamp. It was not a card.
Yes.
And
Surprised KJ doesn't remember that.
yeah, people don't remember. And my brother, my middle
I remember
brother,
those.
Mm-hmm.
he would never. My middle brother, he would never spend a food stamp. He would never do it. Okay. And my mother, she said, well, she picked a date on the calendar and she said, well, when this date comes, we're not going to be on this assistance anymore. And the day came. And for a while, we were doing worse than when we were on it. But the whole mentality back then was that it was, you know, at least in our circles, is it was temporary, you know. But you know, not so much anymore.
No, not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
there's no saying.
You know, we will see. I mean, like I said, they're talking about this Thanksgiving is going to be the most expensive on record. We have crazy gas prices. I went to put gas in the other day. It was like over $4. So it's interesting to see. We've seen Biden's numbers fall. They said at this time he's the lowest on record at this time in his presidency as far as approval ratings. So, you know, I just wonder if Trump were in office, would he have these same issues? Would he have this labor shortage and the supply chain issues? Would he have sent out these stimulus checks?
Trump
was doing pretty well before the pandemic, actually.
Right.
So, you know, I'm sure they would come up with something to be mad with him about. But
of course,
this is what happens when I saw the meme the other day. This is what happens when you order your president through the mail.
Look, like Tyrone, I voted for Trump, and I think I've said before, one of the things that really irks me about being a Republican, which I am a registered Republican, a voter as a Republican, is that they are not fiscally responsible. Republicans as well as Democrats. Democrats might spend more, but Republicans don't rein it in. And this has been creeping and incrementally happening over time. Our legislators are to blame. And to some degree, I think we as consumers are to blame because we keep clamoring for more and more and more.
Yeah. I, first of all, think that part of the problem with the prices is fuel. Okay. We put that back in the hands of OPEC. And so we're not energy independent anymore. So that's pushing up the fuel price, which anything you order is going to be, or purchase is delivered by a truck. So you're going to pay a part of that. I am not Republican. I think that at this day and age, the Republicans are typified by people like Larry Hogan and Mitt Romney, and the guy that's the most assertive, in my opinion, is Rand Paul. And poor Rand Paul hasn't decided to hire some bodyguards yet. He keeps getting beat up in the streets. And so this whole thing where the Republicans are weak, they don't rein in the spending, they don't come back. Joe Manchin is doing a better job of being a Republican than any of the Republicans are right now. So I don't think we'd be facing half of these issues if Trump had won a second term.
All right. Well, on that note, we are at the end of our time. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We will be back next week, same time. All right. So again, join the conversation by leaving a comment on our Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We do check the comments periodically throughout the show. Also, subscribe. That way you get up-to-the-minute content when we post. We appreciate the support. Again, we are an independent media, and each time you subscribe, it helps make our voice that much stronger. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, so again, this is next week, Wednesday. Want to just do a quick plug. Again, we do have a great event coming up next Thursday, the day after the show. It is the Lincoln Reagan Douglas Dinner. It is the inaugural dinner for the Republican Party in Baltimore City, but it's going to be an awesome event. We have Byron Douglas is the keynote speaker. Congressman Byron Douglas is going to Byron Donalds. There's going to be music. There's going to be food. There's going to be me. I'll be there. All of the pop stars will be there. Shelly. So Yana will be back. Xandria. So please join us next Thursday. If you want more information, you can always go to our Facebook page at Metro Conservative Media. Also, you can check out, it's on our website, www.metroconservativemedia.com. And you can check the Baltimore City GOP page. That's www.baltimorecitygop.com. All right. It's
Get your tickets fast. Almost sold out.
Yes, we're almost sold out. So it's going to be a great event. I mean, we're going to have dancing. We're going to have music and we have performances. So it's going to be a really good time. So please come out and support. All right. So that does it for this week. Until next time, count your blessings and live a life of purpose. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.